Lord bless everyone, and today in the podcast, I just want to re-put a testimony I had taken out. It was my fault I took it out. It was a misunderstanding on my part. It was Sister Karen's testimony. Let's play her song, and then we will put her testimony so you could hear it. Let's play a song that she sung. It is called Whisper a Prayer.
Whisper a prayer in the morning. Whisper a prayer at noon. Whisper a prayer in the evening to keep your heart in tune. God's children can pray anytime. God's children can pray anywhere. God's children can pray about anything. God loves us and He answers prayer. God may answer yes when I pray. God may answer wait when I pray. God may answer no, but He's wise and I know. God loves us and He answers prayer. Jesus may come in the morning. Jesus may come at noon. Jesus may come in the evening. So keep your heart in tune.
Hallelujah. Amazing song by her. She has such a lovely voice. We're gonna play her testimony, and this testimony has impacted a good amount of people in the past, and I took it out because of misunderstanding on my part, not her part, and then I said I was gonna put it back, but I never did, and well, a great time to put her testimony when I'm out of state in Florida. And that's what we're going to put her testimony in tomorrow. If God willing, I'll be with you guys at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning with a Bible study. We'll be studying Genesis 22. Hopefully, and can't wait to get to that study for tomorrow. We'll be studying Genesis 21, and then we'll be studying 22. I don't think we've studied 21 yet, but we'll be studying those 2 chapters, God willing, this week. And I'm in Florida right now, and it's such a lovely place compared to seeing Kensington, and Florida is a big difference, very big difference. Here, the government actually cares for the areas, I believe, compared to the areas that I lived and live in Kensington. Anyway, let's listen to her amazing testimony.
So my testimony, I don't know if it should start when I was born or at the beginning of time. Ephesians says that God chose us in the beloved, in Jesus, before the beginning of the world, I think. And but of course I had absolutely no idea about that for a really, really long time. Um, I was rebellious, which is normal for children. I think all children go through a rebellious phase. My family went to church. We were Christians. Um, um, my mom would pray, and sometimes I would burst into the bedroom and find her kneeling and praying. And I was resentful of my mother at a certain point because I felt like she liked church more than me. She was in the choir. She would go with my grandmother to the choir. And so at a certain point, I remember probably when I was about 5, I was mocking my mom, and I was pretending to pray to the devil. And it felt a certain way, like in my heart, to do that. Like I had this angry, evil feeling, but it was also somehow like a feeling that I enjoyed. And so I did that more than once, but I didn't do it more than 2 times. I was just kind of like, whatever. So a couple years after that, as I grew up, I hated to wear dresses to church, and my dad was like really insistent that I wear dresses to church. And I felt really ugly wearing dresses around, like when I was 10. And so I remember I would fight with my parents a lot about that. We had gone to a couple different churches. Like my dad's family, they were Assemblies of God. And I remember sitting in the back and drawing like on a piece of paper. They would give me, paper to draw during the service with. And my mom's family went to a Methodist church. So I remember going to that church, and they had like a little thing for kids to draw on, like a little activity sheet with the color in the picture, the fishes and loaves and stuff. So I went to churches, and I was around church, and my family was Christian, but I really didn't hear the gospel. We didn't go to a church where there was like an altar call. I mean, maybe the Assemblies of God did that. I don't know. My dad's parents had died when I was around age 5 also, so we just went to the Methodist church after that, my mom's parents' church, my grandmother's church. And I became overweight after that when I was in elementary school, and I got glasses, and I felt really ugly. And I just, I struggled to have friendships. And so I just was kind of dysfunctional. And so around 4th grade, I became obsessed with wrestling, pro wrestling. It was super big at the time, and very popular. Like popular to the point where like almost everyone watched it. And that was around 2000, around the year like 99, 2000, 2001, around then, when it was like The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. And I mostly, part of it was I had a crush on a guy in school when I was in 4th grade, and I really, which was weird, because like we were kind of friends, but he also like kicked a soccer ball at my head and laughed at me, and my elementary school was kind of weird because like there were these smart kids, like we were in the gifted and talented program, and I guess I was in that, but there were also non-smart kids that were just kind of poor, that lived in the neighborhood around there. And so it was kind of like a mix between But I felt like I was one of the poor kids. Like, even though I was one of the smart kids, I felt like I identified more with the poor kids. Um, but even then, I didn't even feel like I fit in with them because my family, we were like white and Italian. And then the poor kids were generally like just plain white or Hispanic. And so, and we lived in the middle of a Spanish speaking neighborhood, and I didn't speak Spanish. And like, it was just kind of weird anyway, but like, not weird, but I just felt like I didn't like really fit in. I felt like I didn't really have any close friends. And so, um, as I was going to skip to like teen years, but before that, also around the same time, I had my first crush on a guy and I was obsessed with him, but he didn't like me. So there was this unrequited love thing going on. And then I was obsessed with pro wrestling. And then, Harry Potter came out. And Harry Potter, the book, the Harry Potter book came out, and around when I was 11, and so I, being 11, read the Harry Potter book, and it was like super popular immediately, like almost as soon as it came out, and I was half like, that's dumb. And then I also, I was like, I thought everything that people liked that was really popular was kind of stupid. And so I kind of felt like I set myself apart by not getting onto bandwagon things. But I also perceived Christianity that way, as like, oh, well, it's a common thing, and let me just not be a part of that. Even when I was a kid, like in elementary school, I felt like Christianity was for rich people that dressed nice, that went to church, like the other kids in my church who had nice clothes. I mean, I felt like I fit in with the poor kids more, and there were, anyway, just like all this, that was just how I felt as a kid. That was my attitude. And so I read Harry Potter and like, okay, that's cool. It's not real, but, magic. I was like, but I wanted to believe in something spiritual and supernatural and powerful. And at the library near my house, like my family would go to the library or the bookstore a lot, and we would read books. My dad liked to read books. Me and my brother, we would get in there and read books. There was a display of actual witchcraft books targeted towards youth and teenagers at the library near my house. And there were certain books that my mom did not want me to read. There were shows she didn't want me to watch. And then her and my dad would argue about it. And then somehow I would usually end up getting to look at those things anyway. Or I don't know, they would fight a lot. So I checked out a book targeted towards youth and teenagers about how to do witchcraft. And so in that book, the lady writing the book, may God have mercy on her. Seriously, may God have mercy on her. She wrote that she had these, the way she explained it, she had these kind of reasonable, in her eyes, objections to Christianity. Which to my, me reading this at 11 years old, I didn't really know any better. I knew I wasn't supposed to be reading it. I knew my mom didn't approve of it, but what this woman was saying in this book lined up with how I felt and the argument she had against Christianity, that all these wars had been fought, and so she felt justified in not being a Christian because wars had been fought about it. She made her, she felt like she was more innocent for not having participated or not participating in that. I was like, oh, well, me too. I will be less innocent of participating in wars and conflict if I choose to not be a Christian. So, yeah, so I read that, and I identified as a witch, as a Wiccan, by the time I was 10, 11, 12 years old. And so I just, my parents kept making me go to church, but I just really, I just had this increasing hatred toward church. I still didn't know like what the gospel was, the good news. I didn't know that there was good news. I just thought it was like being forced to go to this building and sit there just like school. Like I was forced to go to school and sit there and listen to somebody in the front talk. I just thought it was like the whole, like all of this societal control and just, I don't know if like I thought it was like manipulation or whatever. I thought it was dumb. I thought I knew better. I thought I could find a better way. I thought I could find something more exciting and true than Christianity. I always believed in God. I never became an atheist. And then when I was Wiccan, I read in the book, it was like, pray to the goddess, do the rituals and invoke the directional angels and all of that. And I repent of that. Like that was horrible, and I got tarot cards. My mom didn't want me to have the tarot cards, but we ended up getting them. My brother got them. My brother would look at them with me. We had other things like Pokemon cards and games and stuff, and but I just thought it was like it's similar to a deck of playing cards, tarot cards, and I didn't understand that there was a spiritual charge to them, or to say spiritual charge, I don't know. I didn't understand that there was anything demonic. Like at a certain point, my aunt said to me, like, hey, like this can invite demons into your life, and I was like, what? I was like, really? Like I don't notice anything. I was like, maybe I kind of like thought about it, but I just kind of put it in the back of my mind. I didn't consider it a whole lot. But anyway, I made friends in school who were interested in the same kinds of things. And I really heavily relied on my friendships in school instead of my family. And I think that's normal around the teen years for kids to, teens to get more of an identity in like friend groups and stuff outside the family. But my friends were also interested in witchcraft and eventually like drugs and sex and everything that was not that was like outside the realm of this boring Christian thing. Like all of my friends I made like after that point, it was on this silent unspoken basis of, well, this is kind of seen as bad, and so it's cool, and so we're into it. And like I wanted to smoke, but I wasn't old enough, and I tried to get the cigarettes, but then my friends became chain smokers in high school, but I tried it and I didn't like smoking, and we started drinking, just drinking and doing various kinds of drugs, and we had various boyfriends and stuff, and wearing black and just having a sinful lifestyle and not really thinking of it as sin. And it's just, like the way I thought about it was like, well, nobody will ever really love me, so why not? Like, why should I respect my body or other people or, whatever. Like, I would make fun of everybody. I was just crazy, I was just trying to live my life, and I wanted to know the meaning of life. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to have comfort, like existential comfort about like what would happen after I died. Like I would worry about it sometimes, even when I was in high school. And I remember one of my friends, like, she's still not a Christian, but I remember at that time, and I don't think her family went to church or anything, but I was talking to her on the phone one night, when I was in high school, and I was like, I said, I'm scared. Like, I don't know what happens after we die. Like, what if there's nothing? Like, what if there's nothing? What if this is it? And there's nothing after this, and eternity will go on, and it will be black, and there's nothing. And she said, I think she promised me, she said, I don't know what happens after this, but I promise you there's something. And so just her saying that, like, I was so without any, stable moral or, spiritual understanding other than my own stuff that I picked up in the Wicca stuff. And but that was a comfort to me. And so, let's see, music became very important to me, like what kind of music I listened to. I kind of escaped from my world and my family life into music. We had moved in with my grandmother who had Alzheimer's, and I just kind of, my life was just, I just felt sad about my life. I was like, I'm fat and ugly, and my grandmother, we live with her, and I can't do anything cool, and, no, like, kind of typical teenager. And so, yeah, yeah, some things are hard to talk about, that I did, but anyway, so I was depressed, and I got to graduate high school, and the summer after graduating, after senior year, I had saved up $3,000, which was kind of like, now I would look at it as this was a gift from the Lord, but I didn't know the Lord, so I was just like, wow, it's exactly the amount of money I need to go to wrestling school. And I had wanted to go to wrestling school. I wanted to be a pro wrestler. I didn't want to go to college. I didn't want to be an academic person. I didn't want to get a normal job. I was like, I want to be a pro wrestler. That's what I want to do with my life. I want to die while wrestling. I want to live fast and die young and be a celebrity, and that's what I wanted to do. So, and I also wanted to, do other things, like go to Italy or whatever, and just, but anyway, so my money that I had that could have gone to wrestling school, it was gone within one summer. All I feel like I did was I bought Starbucks coffees for my friends and hung out with them, and I had a boyfriend who was older than me, and we were both half Italian. I felt like we were supposed to be together, but he had kids with some other lady already, and he was just passing through town, and everyone there at that time that I was friends with, they were all doing drugs every day, drugs every day. And so I didn't, for whatever reason, I was not addicted to doing the drugs. Sometimes I felt like my friends were like, you have to finish we portioned you out some cocaine. You have to finish it. And I felt like the kid at the table, and the parents are like, you have to eat your broccoli. And that's how I felt. I was just like, like cocaine. When I took it, I tried it, I was like, oh, I just feel like I'm having a really good day for about 5 minutes. I was like, oh, I'm having a good day. And that was it. And so my dad, he's a lawyer, and I remember growing up, he would talk about, and he had also been a school teacher and stuff, but he would talk about, people who had died from drug addiction. It will like ruin your life and stuff. So I always had that in the back of my head. I was like, I can't get into this, because like I know it'll like kill me and it'll just ruin my life. But I had other friends who that, kind of really swallowed up their life. And so, for like years, and I didn't know how to help my friends. I wanted to help them, but I didn't have the resources to do that. They just influenced me, and I wasn't a Christian. I didn't know I could be like, God loves you. You don't have to do this, like, because I knew that they were trapped in something, and I wanted to help them, but I just couldn't. And so I just hung out with them and took drugs. And in one summer, like, I was overweight, right? But in one summer, I lost all that money, but I also lost a lot of weight. I lost like 50 pounds in 3 months taking all of these drugs with them, cocaine and ecstasy, like every day, every day, every day. And so a hurricane came through at the end of the summer, and my dad really wanted me to go to college. And so he had been the first one in his family to go to college, or not the first, but his parents hadn't gone to college, and he had. And so it was very important to him that I go to college. And so I was enrolled to go to college to make my dad happy. And it was going to start, school was going to start in the fall. And I was just hanging out with all these people who we were just partying every day. And somehow I ended up in a town about 100 miles away from where I lived and where I was going to go to school. And the people I was with would not bring me back because they were paranoid. And after this hurricane, and my boyfriend at the time, who was not committed to me and was not nice to me and whatever, God bless him. He told my dad, he's like, look, you're gonna have to pay me money for me to bring her back. And so, just like, people just, treated me this way, and I was just like, I didn't know anyone should treat me any better or any differently. So I was like, okay, like, that's fine. And at one point, this boyfriend, I was like riding in the car with him and maybe some other friends, and he was saying to me, like, well, I'm done with you. Give me your phone so I can call some of your other friends that are hot, and maybe I can get with them. And I was like, okay, I don't know, like, what am I gonna do? And he sat there and he like called my contacts from my own phone, like my other friends, and they were just kind of like, what? And yeah, so I never really thought I should be treated in any particular way by guys. I just wanted to, I just wanted someone to love me, and I just didn't know what love was. And so you can imagine, I was very thankful and amazed to realize when God loved me, So I was in college, same thing, trying to party and live my life and also go to school and make my dad happy. And I took, more and more drugs and partied more and more. I would go to class drunk on cough syrup. I started taking acid and mushrooms, and I thought that there was some kind of spiritual stuff that I could find through that. And one day I was walking to the library at school, the university, and I was just sad inside. But I think maybe a lot of people walk around and they're sad inside, but they just don't really acknowledge it or interact with that, or just talk about it. But I was walking, and I was so sad, and my life was so painful, and there was some guy in my life at that time probably that didn't, treat me nice, was just using me, and I didn't know how to not be used or whatever. And so I was walking to the library, and there were some Christians. I could just tell they were Christians, just standing there, gently, not blocking the path, just, just there, next to the path on the way to the library. And it was in this area at the university that some people would sometimes demonstrate. Sometimes it was like pro-Palestine people. Sometimes it was pro-life people. Just different people. They called it like the Free Speech Square or whatever. but I was just walking to the library, and these Christians were there. And so there's this guy that I could tell he was good. He was looking at me, and I was walking, and he was standing there, and I was walking, and I was like, okay, I've seen this in movies and shows, right? Like, he's gonna try to hand me a piece of paper and try to, talk to me about Christianity or Jesus or whatever. And I was like, what I'm supposed to do, what I've seen is the people on TV and movies, they say no thanks and keep walking. And it was just kind of this like motif. This is what I just thought, that's what I thought I was going to do. I was like, I'll say no and I'll keep walking. And so what happened as I walked toward this man, he didn't have anything in his hand. He just looked at me, and him and the people there, they were just asking people if they needed prayer, if they would like prayer. And I don't even remember what he said to me. But I just kept walking, and at the point where I was like, I had planned to say, no, I'm not interested in your thing or whatever. I just burst into tears. I just broke, and I just started crying. And this man hugged me. I had no idea who he was. All I knew is, like, I had just looked into his eyes, and his eyes looked like Jesus. Like, he looked like Jesus. He had a beard. Like, he didn't have long hair, but I was just like, there was this kindness. He was just looking at me kindly. Not even, like, and the way other guys, had looked at me. I had lost a bunch of weight, and so I wasn't used to being attractive and stuff. And all these guys had, they would look at me with, like, lust or whatever, and try to catch my attention that way or whatever. But this man was just looking at me with kindness and love, and I just broke. And so I was crying, and he had, I don't know how many people they had there, but they had a couple chairs set up on the grass, and he directed me toward a woman, or, she was around my age, a girl. I mean, we're in college, so we're women, we're adults, but young adults. And so he's like, here, you can pray with Lauren. And so we started talking, and she became my first Christian friend. And she wasn't, like, beautiful. Like, I was very obsessed with beauty, or, some kind, I was prideful, and, the life I was living, like, partying a lot, and going out to shows, and the art world, I would go to, like, art galleries, I'd do paintings and stuff, that was, even though it shouldn't have been, it was a lot about, like, looks, and just, like, who's beautiful, anyway, so she wasn't, like, beautiful in the way that, she didn't have, like, makeup on. She wasn't, like, about her looks, but I just kind of noticed this about her. But she was also, like, from the way she acted, like, she didn't act like embarrassed that she wasn't, like, super traditionally beautiful. She was happy, and she would smile. And so when I had these, this Christian friend, like, we would just talk about stuff, and, like, for the first time I was open to listening to, like, Christians say anything. Like, I became open to what she had to say. And I remember she was married, and I didn't know anyone around my age who was married. Like, people it just seemed too out of reach, too complicated to get married. But here she was, she had a wedding ring. And I remember one time her and I were sitting and talking on campus somewhere else, like behind the student center. And this guy, like, this was really strange. And I feel like the Lord led everything about this, but I didn't know at the time exactly, but we were just sitting there. And this guy walks up to us from, like, across the plaza, and to talk to her and ask for her phone number. Like, a white guy. Like, white guys don't usually do that. And I'm not trying to be racist. I'm just saying I've never I've never seen another white guy do that. White guys kind of do something else. They don't just walk up to a girl and ask for their number. But he walked up to her and he was like, "Hey, could we hang out sometime?" Like he was like attracted to her like a magnet, even though I didn't think she was super beautiful or anything. You know, and this is just to my thinking, and this is God just showing me. And she's like, "I'm married. No, sorry, you know, I'll be your friend, but I'm married." And she, you know, she wasn't like rude or anything. She was just like, "I'm married." um, and that was just like, that was such a witness to me, you know, because like around that time, I had started in a 12-step program I had heard about through a friend's girlfriend. It was for Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. And I had figured out that I could not make a relationship work to save my life. I couldn't stay with the same person even though I desperately wanted to. It was always, you know, like the guys I would end up dating, like I didn't really like them, and then I would be obsessed with someone else, but that person didn't like me. And then because I was dating someone, and when I say dating, you know, I was like sleeping with them and sexual immorality and sin, and it was just stupid. And I just, what it, like, stupidest sin ever. Like, so addiction, you know, just like slavery. When the Bible talks about slavery to sin, like, it was horrible. Like, it was absolutely horrible. Just, just, um, just being in that slavery to that sin and that addiction. It was horrible. Like, I couldn't make a decision about my career and studying stuff because I was always trying to plan around, like, okay, this boyfriend I have, like, we'll have lunch together at this time between my classes, and we'll move into his house, or like we'll do this and that and the other. And then I would end up cheating on him, and then I would end up just with some other boyfriend. Okay, okay, he lives far away. Okay, so we're gonna try to figure out. And it was just like all, and I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop. I didn't want to be single. I didn't want to be alone. It was just this terrible cycle. Anyway, so I started this 12-step program, and that was about 2010. And so around the time when I was in the 12-step program, and I had made this Christian friend, and I was just kind of still thinking about spirituality in terms of where I fit into it. You know, I was also I was heavily into astrology, deeply into astrology. I was coordinating my life by astrology. I was doing people's birth charts. I was obsessing over my own birth chart. And it looked like my future was locked in. Like in this birth chart, it said, you know, I will always have a problem in the area of love and romance and family or whatever. And then, astrology. That's another one. I highly recommend people never get into that. That was slavery and a chain, and just I was literally driving myself crazy to the point where I could not handle my own life, between where I was taking psychedelic drugs and then just obsessing over astrology. I can't tell you how miserable and scared and locked into this belief system that I was of astrology and divination. Like, I could not get out of it, and I was miserable, and I was like, this looks terrible, can someone prove this wrong to me? And I was trying to find like atheist friends, logical people, the Christians, anyone, anybody. I was willing to talk to anybody to see if they could prove astrology wrong to me, because I couldn't get out of it. Because it seemed like things would happen, and it seemed like astrology was right, but I didn't want it to be right, because it seemed like I would be stuck with this fate. And I was like, I want to have some kind of control over my fate and my destiny. And astrology said, no. This is the way it is. You're stuck. It's always going to be this way. You're never going to get out of this. And this is how your life is. And this is how everything is. And I was just like, I felt trapped. And so I had moved in with a boyfriend. Um, and I was also working at the Jewish Community Center and going to school. And I had another job too. Or was this after that? I can't remember. But anyway, I was working at the Jewish Community Center, and I had moved in with a guy who was in another 12-step program that I had gone to middle school with. Like, we reconnected at a bar. No, we weren't in a bar. This is my stupid character. I was on a date with this other guy who was nice. He wasn't a Christian, but he was nice. And I was on a date with that guy, and we were leaving, and I think the movie we saw, like, really freaked me out. Like, I began to have panic attacks during movies around that time, because my mind would wander, and I'm like, I'm trapped in a movie theater, and I'm gonna die someday, and I don't have answers about, like, what's gonna happen after I die, and I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I was terrified. And so I was on a date with this guy, and this movie freaked me out. And the end of it, like, it was not a Christian movie. I've since researched it on Wikipedia, but, like, this movie, at the end of it, I was like, that is such a cheesy, lame Christian reference. Like, the movie became, like, at the end, it was like three guys that were the same guy. The movie was called Looper, and so it was three guys from one guy in three different periods of time. So it was like an old guy, a younger guy, and a kid or something. But it was the same guy, but it was three different forms of the same guy, versions or whatever. And at the end, one of them had to kill himself in order to stop the loop from happening, or something like that, in order to save everybody else. And I was like, that is such a lame, cheesy, like, call back to Christianity. Like, what, and no one else noticed that in the movie. I looked it up later, and no one else got any kind of Christian reference from it except to me. It just stood out to me, and I know people were praying for me, because, like, I met Christians at art shows and stuff, and they were like, they were just. I know people, and I know my mom was praying for me. She said at one point she had calluses on her knees from praying so much. Because there would be, like, days at a time when I wouldn't come home, and it was just. But that was before I had moved in with that particular boyfriend that I met while I was on a date with another guy. Anyway, and I was just, I felt, and that guy, like, the first guy that I was on a date with, like, he cried when I was breaking up with him to be with this other guy, because the other guy had, like, forced me to sleep with him. And then I was like, well, now I'm obligated to the guy that I slept with, and I have to be with him. And this other, it was just, like, such a horrible, terrible, stupid mess. And I regret it, and God have mercy on me and all these people that I slept with, and just God have mercy on us all. It was just, it's sin. And all my friends lived the same kind of lifestyle. Like, this was our life, and this was just what we did. And it's what our generation, I want to say everyone, not everyone in our generation, but it's just, common that people do that. Like, this is just commonplace in America. And so in certain circles, I guess. But so I was in this 12-step program, and this boyfriend I had moved in with was cheating on me, even though we had talked about getting married. And I tried to revenge cheat on him, and he cheated on me, and then I was like, well, he did my thing that I'm in my 12-step program about, which was sleep with someone, so I'm going to do his thing, which was drugs, to get back at him, doing the drug that he's trying to stay away from. So I did this particular drug with his brother, and so that really upset him, like I wanted it to, and I still feel bad about that, like calculating what would hurt someone the most and doing that thing. Like, I hope I never do that again, by God's grace. Like, it did not make me feel good to intentionally try to hurt someone. I mean, in a sense it did, like revenge, but it's just like, anyway, so, like, it was a mess. And he kicked me out because he was cheating on me, and I had been working at the Jewish Community Center, and they had been studying Passover. It was around the time of Passover 2013. It was in March. And I remember I was standing, it was nighttime, and I was standing at the top of the stairs of this garage apartment, like outside, looking up, and it was nighttime, and I looked up, and there was this full moon, and I was like, didn't something like this happen, like with Moses in the Bible and Exodus? Like, I didn't know what the story was exactly, but I knew it was they're leaving a place, and they're going into another place, like the wilderness. And that was all I knew about this story. And I felt like that was what was happening to me. And it was. That was what happened to me. And I had wondered about Judaism. I had wondered, like, because I had explored all of these. I had explored Eastern religions. I had gone through Buddhism. I had gone through Hinduism and found that not sufficient, for my questions and for life. Wicca and divination, astrology. Like, I had gone through all of these things, but I had never considered Judaism in a spiritual way. As, like, I began to kind of look at it, I was like, maybe there's something there. I was listening to Christians, and I was like, maybe there's something there. Like, I was listening to that, but Judaism as well. It's kind of like, and I researched, like, could I convert to Judaism? And also, because in my 12-step program, they were like, you've got to take a break from guys for like a month. And I was like, I'm going to have to be a nun. They're like, don't even talk to guys. And I'm like, I'm going to have to become a nun. That's it. And so I was studying, can I become a nun or can I convert to Judaism? And like, so I looked at this monastery, convent? I looked up this convent in like West Texas, and I called them and I was like, can I come visit sometime and see if I, and so I was researching Judaism and Catholicism at the same time. Like, what do I have to do? Just totally ridiculous, because those are two incompatible things. But that's just where I was. I was kind of like, maybe this one, maybe that one. And so boyfriend at the time kicked me out. Okay, moved back in with my parents. So around that time, it was July of that year, I was doing summer school, and I was like, my life does not make sense. I want to make sense of life, and I believed in, like, fractals and this. I believed in a very deep underlying spiritual nature to reality, that, like, if one thing was true somewhere, it had to be true on a other level, like somewhere else. Like, I knew that there was this ultimate truth somewhere, and I wanted to know what it was. And so, and I wanted to live my life in a more logical manner. So I began to take classes in college. Like, I took logic. I failed it. But I was trying to come up with, like, a better way to make decisions. And the study of life, biology. So I figured, like, if I can understand something about life at this most basic tiny level of, like, plants and stuff, the study of life, biology, then maybe I will begin to find a way to live my life. And so I tried to live my life by the scientific method, because I was like, reality had gotten kind of confusing for me, because I had taken so many drugs and believed so many crazy things. Like, there's one philosophy called solipsism, where it's like, you are the only real person, and everything else and everyone else is just an illusion. And there were just all of these philosophies I had tried on for size, and I was like, I'm having trouble with reality right now. And there were these times where I was not on drugs, and there would be these crazy coincidences, and I was like, I think there's something wrong with reality, because that should not have happened. That did not make sense. Like, one time with my Christian friend Lauren, I had privately, I had read a little Buddhist magazine, and the Buddhist magazine said, life has these knots. It's like we're these strings, but it gets tied up in knots with our complexities and desires and whatever. And so, like, later that day or week, completely unrelated, I had not mentioned this to this Christian friend of mine, anything about these knots or whatever, but she was just talking. And she said, you know what she said? She said, it's like life, like, it's like we're these strings, and we get these knots, and it's complicated, and everything's all tied up and messed up. And then Jesus undoes the knots. And I was like, what? Why did you talk about knots? I just read it, like, I read about the knots in this Buddhist magazine. Like, what's going on? And so there had just been this series of weird coincidences in my life, like since 2010, and it was now 2013. And what had happened was that seeds had been planted in my life of God's word and God's truth, and they were growing, and I was going to have to get out of the way. Like, it was proving me wrong. Like, God was proving me wrong in every area of my life, and I was wrong in every area of my life, but God was also proving that he was there, he's real, he's God, and he loves me. And so piece by piece and bit by bit, so like I had this thing about Judaism, and I was kind of researching it personally. I thought maybe my family had this thing from, we were in Italy, and maybe we had been some of those Jews that were forced to convert to Catholicism, because my dad's family had been Catholic until my grandparents' generation, and then they converted to be Assemblies of God, not the Catholic Church anymore. But I was like, maybe we had been Jews back there. And so that went along with the Jewish thread I was researching. And so it was going to be, in July 2013, it was going to be my my grandmother's sister, my great aunt's 109th birthday party. She was turning 109 years old. And so my parents were going to go, and they invited me, and I said, okay. I was like, okay. All right, sounds cool. Sounds okay. I'm willing. I was willing to go. And I was like, I'm going to look for a menorah on the shelf or something. I'm going to look for some evidence that we had been Jewish. So we look it up. I mean, not like look it up, but I went, we borrowed a friend's, they borrowed a friend of theirs car from church, or like he offered it. This guy really wanted me to be saved. Like it was this older man, like my parents' age, and he had given us a book, and he like taped a $20 bill on the back of the book, like, as a surprise reward for reading the book. It was a Christian book. I didn't read it, but I got the $20. Anyway, but like he cared about my soul. He was like probably the only person from the Methodist Church who I could tell that he cared about my soul. Maybe other people did, I don't know, but just he really cared. Lord bless him. So he let us borrow his car to drive to Louisiana for my great aunt's 109th birthday party in July of 2013. And my dad said, okay, my cousin is going to be there, and he's a millionaire. So there's a millionaire walking around. And, okay. So, kind of side note, I was really interested in conspiracy theories about the Illuminati at that point, and like rich people and all that stuff, and like the secret elite stuff. And there was just I wasn't thinking about that. I don't know. And then I had just my heart had been broken, and I was just kind of like, okay, whatever, like all these other things on my mind. But I went to the birthday party, and I was kind of observing. There were a lot of people there, but I was just kind of curious about my great aunt, if I could just kind of pick up on any wisdom about how to live a long life. At that point, I was not sure if I was going to live a long life. I had done a lot of things that I, was pretty sure I would die young for. I was not sure if I had any kind of terminal illnesses. I was very hypochondriacal. I was a hypochondriac at that point. And anyway, I was like consumed with fear, but I thought, maybe on the off chance I get to live a long time, maybe I'll pick up some wisdom from her. And so I tried to pick up some wisdom from my 109-year-old great aunt. And there were like 50 people there. There were a lot of people there. She had a lot of children and grandchildren and great grandchildren and great great grandchildren probably. And so it was time for her to blow out the candles on her cake. And so she had, I think, great great grandchildren blowing out the candles like these little kids. And so she addressed, she just said matter-of-factly, she addressed the whole crowd around. And she said, "My prayer is that I would see my whole family in heaven with me." And that was it. That was her statement. That was her blowing out the candle wish. It was a prayer that she let all of us hear. It was not a secret. And so that was it. And the little kids blew out the candles. And I was standing there. I heard that. And I had not thought about heaven since I was a small child. And what I had thought about heaven was that it's like clouds and it's a bright place. Up in the clouds and it's a bright place and the puffy white clouds and there's light shining from all around or whatever. Like that was just clouds and brightness. And so I was like, heaven. And then I was like, I just thought about heaven. I was like, I don't know how to get there. I didn't think about it long, but I was just like, heaven. I don't know how to get there. And around this time, the millionaire, my dad's cousin, walks up to me and he says, "You want to hear my God story?" And I was like, okay. And I didn't know he was a millionaire. I just thought he was like a regular, old guy in my family. And he tells me his God story. So his God story, I know not everyone becomes a millionaire and that's the prosperity gospel, but his God story included how he became a millionaire. God had gifted him with this wealth. And that was just part of his testimony of how God had taken care of him and his wife. Like he said they had just gotten married and it was like the 60s or 70s or whatever. And he had graduated college, but he couldn't find a job and he got a real estate license and his wife had graduated and they had rented a house or whatever in Louisiana and their house flooded 5 times in 4 years. And they were just like, ugh. And they prayed. And he had passed through Orange County in his military service. So they prayed and they packed up their car and they went to California. And so at that time, his wife's dad was visiting in the same town as well in Orange County. And that he was visiting a church, so they went to that church with him. And so my dad's cousin said that church had let out. They got there on Friday. They went to church on Sunday. Church was letting out. This man was talking to them after church, and he said, "Oh, you got a real estate license? Well, if you can figure out what a condominium is." Or townhome, it was either a townhome or a condominium. He said, if you can figure out what that is, they're all the rage in Europe, and if you can find a place to build one, you've got a job. We can build it. If you can just help us with that. So my dad's cousin helped bring condominiums or townhomes or whatever to the United States. I mean, now it's like a common thing for us, but at that time it was not a big thing. So he became a millionaire. And I did see a menorah on the shelf at my great aunt's house. Actually, it was her son's house that they had the birthday party at. And he had an awesome God story too. But I had heard this God story about the millionaire, and so party wraps up. We head back to Houston from Louisiana. It's like a 5-hour drive, whatever, life goes on, we go back home. And so I'm just kind of a little more open, a little more thinking about things, just a little more open. And in the Bible, it talks about, I think it's the book of Malachi, where it says the spirit of Elijah, who was John the Baptist, but in the Old Testament, when it says before the Messiah will come, the spirit of Elijah will come, and he will turn the hearts of the parents to the children and the children to the parents, or else the Lord will strike the land with total destruction. But I think part of the ministry of John the Baptist was turning the hearts of the parents to the children to the parents, and I've kind of spiritualized this and thought about this, but it was Baptists who I had talked to, and so I kind of, at this time, around that time, my heart kind of was turned toward my parents some more than it had been, and I was a little bit more open, and so I was open to suggestions, and so we went back to Houston, and I was like, man, my life is falling apart, and I had dreams when I was a kid, so I was kind of like digging through my life for hope, and I found this old map in my room from when I was a kid, and I had drawn out a map of a road trip I wanted to take, and I had plotted out going from this town to this town to this town, and I was like, okay, I'm going to take this road trip, and I was like, I don't have a car, I'll ride the bus. I'm going to take a Greyhound bus between each town. I'm going to find someone to stay with that I kind of know in different places. Like, I had planned out this road trip, and my dad was like, no, why don't you go visit my cousin in California for a week? And I was like, that sounds lame, but tolerably okay. Like, he's a millionaire. Like, it just sounds interesting enough that I'm willing to give it a chance and humor you. Okay. And my dad was like, I'll pay for your plane ticket. You'll go visit them in California. And I was like, okay. So that was also July of 2013. And so we bought these plane tickets. They were crazy expensive because it was like for the next weekend or whatever. But, and I was on my way. And so I went to Orange County, California. It was the second time I had been to California. I had been the year before. I went to San Francisco. And I had fun, but I was taking drugs. And so it was not like a godly time, but it was just kind of, I thought it was fun. But I didn't know what fun was. And so when you become a Christian, you find out what fun really is. And that's the joy of the Lord and his pleasure and his peace and just the wonderful things that only he can do. It's beyond magical. It's amazing. It's overwhelming. It's beautiful. It's exhilarating. It's spectacular serving God. Like, it's even saying serving, like, that sounds boring. Like, there's nothing boring about serving God at all whatsoever, even a little bit. Like, even if you feel like sometimes it's boring, it's not boring to serve God at all. It's not, because God is the creator. He made us. He knows exactly what we need, and he wants us to delight in him, and he gives us his joy and his pleasure and his delight. And anyway, so I went to California, and I got there, and I called the guy, my dad's cousin, from the airport, and I said, I'm here. And he's like, we'll have the dancing elephants ready for you. He picked me up, and he drove me to their mansion. They were in Laguna Niguel, which recently, the wildfires recently destroyed their amazing mansion. This past month or so, but at that time they had this mansion, and they had a guest mansion. I got to stay in the guest mansion that was 3 stories tall, and it had a marble floor in the kitchen and like this over scenic view to the Pacific Ocean. over this kind of wilderness area, or like this little park or whatever. There were cookies. I mean, it was just like this fully stocked guest mansion, and they had their mansion, and I was just like, kind of like the guy's reaction in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He's just like, what? I took pictures of everything. I took pictures of like their antique furniture. It was like being in a museum, but they lived there. Like there were just white marble floors, and just, it was beautiful. It was like the most beautiful, amazing, it was like a palace. It was like they live in this palace. And they had this huge like living room area, and they were pointing at their table. They're like, oh yeah, this table, it folds out and you can fit like 30 people at it. Not folds out, but they put the leaf in the middle or whatever, like the middle part. And he said, yeah, sometimes we host a symphony. It's like a local symphony. We'll have them over here and they'll play. And I was like, wow. I was just like astounded. I was like, wow. And I only stayed with them for a week, okay? So I was picking up some things. I was just picking up some things, like understanding, just kind of observing and noticing some things. I was like, these people are old, but they have a better and more satisfying social life than I do. And I party all the time. I go to parties, I go to shows. Like I did as many social activities as I possibly could in my life, you know, and they had a better social life than I did, and they were old. I mean, I didn't know about like the richness being a factor, but I was like, he took his employees out on a boat and to dinner, and he was just treating his employees, and we went, and he invited me to go with them, and we looked at seals, and just out on this boat in the water, and it was just beautiful, and even his employees were like richer than the normal rich people that I would ever encounter. Like this was way out of my social class. Like I was just like, whoa. And then him and his wife took me to this play. It was called I Do, I Do. And the play was about if this married couple was stuck in a single bedroom. Okay, the premise of the story was this guy was stuck in a bedroom during the Holocaust hiding, and he wrote this play or something like that. And so it was a story of a married couple in a bedroom, and just like over 50 years of their life together or whatever, like the fights they would have, the conversations they would have, just like over the years. And it was really interesting, despite, you know, just being one scene, one setup, and these two actors. But it really made me think about love and marriage, and I really wanted to get married. I really wanted somebody to love me and not leave, and me not leave them. And I really wanted that. I couldn't figure out how to get it. Even in the 12-step program, I couldn't figure it out. I just could not figure it out. And Christians seem to have that. And I didn't. My grandparents had that. My parents had that. And I didn't know how I could have that. And there had been a time when I was back home before this, and I felt like reality, like I was stuck in like all of these habits and stuff, and I thought, I was like, God, if you will allow me to live a normal life and not have any terminal illnesses and just get married and have a family, I'll tell everyone how awesome you are. I'll live for you. I'll do whatever you want. I'll write a book for you. If you'll just let me live. Because I was convinced I was going to die. I was like, if you'll let me live and have a normal life and get married and have a family, I'll tell everyone how awesome you are. And so, so when I was on that trip in California, I was only there for a week with my dad's relatives, and they were rich, and they said they knew other rich people, like the guy who started a big Christian channel. And I was like, observing them, I was like, we went to In-N-Out Burger one time. Like, I was like, these are regular people, even though they're super rich, like, they're not judging me. I certainly see no evidence of Illuminati stuff anywhere. I see no hidden malice or wickedness or sneakiness. and they're happy. And one of the last things that really touched me was that I really liked the movie Cabaret in high school, and I would watch it over and over. Liza Minnelli, Cabaret, and at the end of the movie, Liza Minnelli chooses to get an abortion and not marry the guy and stay in the city she was in and singing in the nightclub she was in and try to get famous, all the while the Nazis are taking over. And then it's just this, the movie ends there, and it's like, you know, and I kind of modeled my life after that. I was like, I'm still gonna try to get famous, but like this, my dad's cousin's wife character in Cabaret had decided to get married and not try to stay and get famous somewhere, and just not give up, but just like, as she had like lived a normal life and just gone off with the guy and like been okay and accepted that as the path of love rather than the path of self. My dad's cousin's wife reminded me of that, of like this alternative of choosing life. And I just thought about that, and other things that it's hard for me to talk about, but just like more coincidences where it's like, this is only God could know about this. And she said something to me about something that had completely shattered my heart, and I couldn't fix it, and nothing could fix it short of God. And she said she had something like that too, and I hadn't even mentioned it to her. And I was like, and I thought to myself, I was like, only God would know about that, because like nobody else knew about that. And she just, out of the blue, she said something about it, and I was like, whoa. And but it was my last day there, and she was playing the piano and singing, and they were just singing a couple songs. And my family does that, like they sing, they get around and sing some songs. And she sang this song, and I was sitting there in this chair, and I don't know if she had handed me this book or whatever, and it's all kind of fuzzy. My memory is blurry, because I started crying, and I was crying and crying and crying and crying, and I couldn't stop crying. And she played this song that I remembered from when I was in church as a kid. I remembered sitting in the pew as a kid in the Methodist church hearing this song. And the song is, "Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness, O God my Father." And great is thy faithfulness, O God my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. And I was just weeping, and I realized in that moment that God had always loved me, even though I didn't love him. And I realized all those times I could have died hanging out with people, smoking pot in the woods, and these guys with guns chased us, or just all this crazy stuff, all these crazy drugs I had taken, all these dangerous positions I had gotten myself in, and I could have died, or there could have been a horrible crisis, and everything always went better than it should have. Like, I was always got away just in time. Like, everything always went okay, and I was like, God has always been taking care of me. God has always loved me. And it was like my whole life flashed before my eyes, and I just realized how patient God had been, looking at me, watching me, just waiting for me to notice him, to notice that he loved me. And in an instant, I knew the Bible was true. I knew Christianity was real. Like, I hadn't read all of the Bible, but I just knew in an instant. I knew it was true. I knew God was real. I knew Christianity was true. And I thought back to the Methodist church I went to when I was a kid, and I was like, how did I miss this? How did I not get this as a child? Like, I could have gotten this as a child, and I didn't. And it's like, how did they know the truth of the universe and they didn't communicate it to me? Like, how did this happen? And I was just crying, and I knew it was true. And so she finished playing the song, and they were getting ready to take me to the airport, and my luggage was all packed, and I was just crying and in shambles. And she handed me this devotional book, and she said, go home and get a Bible. And she recommended me a translation, that they have for, younger people or whatever. And she said, just go home and get a Bible and read it. And that's what I did. And I got a Bible. I got a couple Bibles, and I read the Bible, and I got back home, and I went to Bible studies. I went to church. I tried to catch up for all the lost time that I had wasted, and the Bible studies and the Christians, and they said God loves me and He's forgiven me in His Son Jesus, and he forgave all my sins when He went to the cross. And they told me this over and over, and I was just like, what? Like, God loves me. God forgave me. And I was like addicted to going to church. I wanted to go Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I wanted to go every day of the week. And I just wanted to catch up for lost time, because I was still in college, and when I went to the Bible studies in college, all the kids my age, they were getting married, 20-something. They were getting married, and I was just like, man, like, I'm just starting out. Like, y'all have all this wisdom, y'all know so much, and I'm just starting out. And I compared myself to them, and I felt inferior, because I had like slept around so much, and then it turned out that the people I compared myself to, they weren't all that in a bag of chips. They were like, one girl gave me a parable. She said it's like when Jesus talked about there were these men standing there doing nothing in the morning, and Jesus came to get them to work. Not Jesus, but the man in the story. And then in the afternoon, he went back out, and there were some other people standing there doing nothing. And the man gets them, he says, come work in my field. And later in the afternoon, he finds some more people, come work in my field. The evening, he goes out and he gets some people. He says, come work in my field. And they all have the same wage. Nobody gets paid more than anybody else. And so the people that started in the morning, they were like, hey, we should make more. But he's like, are you going to fault me because I'm generous? Like, I can do what I want with my own money. And everyone had the same amount that they were paid. And it's just in the parable of the sower, and I read the Bible, and I got baptized at a certain point, and I still struggled with sin, but Jesus slowly freed me over time, and I still made terrible choices, but now I knew that it was Jesus picking me up. And the righteous fall down 7 times, and they get back up again. And the Lord helped me get up again every time. And sometimes I wanted to die. I was so sad. And God helped me every time. And the Lord helped me through, and I couldn't find a job, and I found one and I lost it. And the Lord helped me. He helped me get a job, and He helped me get my own place. And I live in the same apartment complex that I did when I was 18, and hanging out with my friends and doing drugs, and the Lord has brought me so far, such a short distance. And now I work with I ended up working in a children's ministry. The Lord like gave me a vision one time at a Bible study of like all these children running at me and past me, like a sea of children running towards me and past me. And I was like, Lord, I don't want to be a teacher. It scares me. It freaks me out. I don't want to work with kids. I don't want to. But if you want me to do that, you're going to have to make it happen. And the Lord made it happen. Like the Lord guided that the only jobs I ended up having, it was like I worked at a church nursery, and then I worked at a school, and then I worked at another school. And the Lord guided me into a children's ministry. And it's like, in every age group I didn't want to work with, because I was like, that freaks me out. I don't want to do it. The Lord guided, I was like, I don't want to work with teenagers, and the Lord guided me to work with teenagers. I was like, I don't want to work with little kids, and then the Lord made it so that I had to work with little kids, and now I work with all ages of kids, and it's just like, it's just astounding. Like, it's just, it doesn't feel like the same life, and it's not the same life anymore. It's a completely different life, and all praise and glory to the Most High God, who is love. He is love. God is love, and He showed us His love. He showed us His love by giving Jesus as the atoning sacrifice for our sins, the sins of the whole world, of whoever would believe. And He gives faith as a gift. He saves us. He gives us that faith to come to Him, even if it's just a mustard seed of faith, a tiny speck of faith. And He gives us that. He allows us to come to Him. He says, no one who comes to Him will He ever turn away. Jesus will not turn anyone away. And it's just amazing.
We're gonna end our program here, and I'll see you tomorrow with Mr. Kakalides and the Bible Podcast. The grace of the Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God the Father, and the communion of the Holy Spirit be with all of you. And the Church of God says, Amen.